Hello, I'm Moshe Heller, and I am from Motion Herbs on one hand, and also representing Jingshen Pediatrics, which is a organization that teaches classes on pediatric treatments with acupuncture. And I'd like to thank the American Acupuncture Council for having me today and helping me host this um, very interesting talk about the concept of Yin Fire in pediatrics. So let's start. Can we turn on the slides? Okay, so I'm going to be talking about this idea of Yin Fire. And before I actually would like to discuss that, I wanted to uh, bring your attention to the idea that comes from pediatric acupuncture, and I'm going to talk about this for a second before we go into Yin Fire, and that is a concept that actually comes from Julian Scott from his book The Treatment of Pediatrics with Acupuncture, that there are five common patterns of disharmony in children. And the reason I'm pointing to this idea is that there's some correlation, or there's some um, similarities between the ideas that he kind of presents in his book and the concept of Yin Fire, and we'll see how that correlates in a little bit. But I want to kind of discuss these five patterns as sort of like an introduction. So these five patterns include a regular spleen qi deficiency type, and that's usually seen in a deficient type patient, a pediatric patient. Usually they'll have digestive issues, similar to the same concept of having a spleen qi deficiency in your adult patients, and that I think I don't need to explain too much. Hopefully everybody knows that. The other pattern, the next pattern, is a lingering pathogenic factor, and that comes from the idea that children are more susceptible to pathogenic factors, and more so they are more susceptible to having these pathogenic factors linger and continue to influence them further than the initial invasion. The other three, the next one is called hyperactive kidney deficiency, hyperactive qi deficiency, and accumulation disorders. So these three are the ones I want to kind of point out because there are similar in that there is this kind of the similar idea of Yin Fire, where you have a dull or a rooted deficiencies condition that creates uh, excess-like symptoms. And that's at the root of Yin Fire. And that's why I wanted to point out these three patterns also. The hyperactive kidney deficiency and the hyperactive spleen qi deficiency, both at the root, you will see signs of spleen deficiency, our classical signs of spleen deficiency, coupled with a lot of behavioral excess, meaning difficulty falling asleep, being hyperactive in their behavior, kids that seem very excessive and sometimes difficult to control, although at the core, they are presenting with a spleen deficiency signs and symptoms. The accumulation disorder is classically, according to Julian Scott, belongs to an excess type. But really, I've seen a lot of accumulation disorder in my office that are deficient patients with the accumulation or this kind of accumulation of dampness, and in particular that manifests as excess signs and symptoms. So I just wanted to give that as a introduction to the idea of Yin Fire, because I think it's not totally foreign, or it's not completely new in that type of thinking. But let's talk about Yin Fire, and just wanted to point out that the concept of Yin Fire was discussed first by Li Dongyuan, who wrote the book The Pi Wei Lung in 1249. In there, we all know that Li Dongyuan was this famous Chinese doctor who developed the idea of the spleen and stomach school, meaning that he believed that a lot of um, uh, disorders, or most disorders, were created or stem from this spleen chi vacuity, and and in his discussions, he discussed the idea of yin fire, which is again um, this idea of spleen vacuity at the core, and then having yin fire, which we'll discuss what that means in a little bit. And this idea of Li Dongyuan was discussed and debated by many important Chinese doctors throughout the years. And actually has gained more attention in today. I hear a lot of practitioners talking about Yin Fire, not recently, and a lot of lectures and discussions, which is very interesting. And the reason I think it's becoming very popular is because it's actually can be an explanation for many chronic diseases, or diseases that are a mixed pattern of excess and deficiency in combination, and we'll see how that works well in a little bit. But it's actually, uh, although you see all these excess signs and in the forefront, because those are more clear, um, the right treatment principle is a principle of strengthening and resolving the main core idea of this deficiency that's causing the excess like symptoms that are not really excess. So I brought this excerpt from the Pi Wei Lun, which is the opening paragraph, um, sort of defining what Yin Fire is, and it's translated by Lorraine Wilcox, which provides a very good translation. In this, you can find her article about this translation very easily. So let me read this because I think it's really important to understand what is said here. So if and it starts by talking of saying this: if eating and drinking becomes irregular, or cold and warmth are inappropriate, the spleen and stomach becomes damaged. So the first sentence, we see that the causes of this imbalance, the causes of this balance of the damage of spleen and stomach, come from diet, basically. It says it's either diet, um, or inappropriate exposures to warmth and cold. And the diet is really a very important aspect of that. and we have to I want to point out before moving on that is at the core of the treatment principles. When I recognize Yin Fire, diet is one thing. I have a very long discussion with my patients, with the parents and the children, depending who I'm treating, about regulating diet, and not so much, not as much as I put as much as emphasis on the scheduling and how you eat, and enough chewing and not swallowing your food, but chewing it and giving it time, and having and eating in regular schedule, as part of this kind of healing of the spleen and stomach. So this is a very important aspect that we need to pay attention to. Then he goes on saying, or joy, anger, anxiety, and fear can also consume original qi, or it's called, he names it as yuan qi. And here we have to be, and Lorraine also uh, points out that what he calls yuan qi, we have to be careful not to confuse that with what we call yuan, kidney yuan, or yuan source. It's a different, this yuan qi is very much associated with what we might call the qing qi, or the clear qi that comes out of digestion, right? So after gu qi is derived from the food and drink, it is it is connected with the qi of the air. It becomes this kind of yuan qi, and it actually is associated with the lower jiao. So it's connected also with some of the uh, um, kidney qi. So it stems from the lower jiao and goes up to the upper jiao. So that's the yuan qi that we're talking about in this case. Once spleen and stomach qi has declined and original qi has become insufficient, the only thing that is abundant is the pathological fire of the heart. So in a sense, this clear chi allows the balance, or allows the balance between that and heart fire. So once they are declining, the fire in the heart becomes pathological. And this heart fire is Yin Fire, which arises in the lower jiao and connects with the heart through its system. So this whole system has to do with the relationship of the pericardium and the menstrual fire, and it is associated with this kind of movement of qi, and so of movement of qi up and down, and in our body, and therefore a lot of this yin fire is associated with stagnation of qi. So we'll see that also in a little bit. So minister fire is the fire of the lower jiao and the bao luo. There's a whole discussion what bao luo means, which we won't go into. And once that ministerial fire is this, it is the thief of original qi. Fire cannot coexist with the original qi. One of them will become victorious and the other will be defeated. So we see this kind of mechanism that's described, which is which I want to sort of in the next slide. I've sort of created this visual presentation of it. If we have the lower, middle, and upper levels here, this ministral fire should be coming down from the heart and placed under the pot, if you say, of the spleen and stomach. So the yuan qi is also arises from here, and is in part of the process. But if the ministral fire is misplaced, it creates more heat. If you can imagine this kind of ministral fire as being the fire under the pot, if the fire is sitting aside from the pot, it brings up heat that can harass the heart. And so, as the spleen and stomach is supposed to raise, the spleen is supposed to bring up the chi to the chest, and the stomach ripening and rotting, and it is supposed to connect with the lung chi to create gu chi, and then this is sort of the source of our postnatal chi, and also the source of having a very strong and balanced yin chi and wei chi. So as we can see here, this is all once there's an imbalance here, it affects our ability to have a balanced immune system. It has it will affect the mechanisms of our own energy, so that it will be very imbalanced. And if we understand this pathomechanism, we can understand and see it in our patients much clearer. So I want to just also point out that throughout these discussions and development, there's actually a lot of different. So Yin Fire is not one thing; it's actually a concept. And in an article in the JCM, the Journal of Chinese Medicine, called An Introduction to Chinese Medicine, Concept of Yin Fire by Sean Ransden. He writes this, it's a great article, and I would recommend reading it. But he talks about the concept of Yin Fire has been discussed and debated through the history of Chinese medicine, and he brings this modern author from 2007, Liu Duzhu, who classified Yin Fire according to 4 different categories. One of them is the what he calls exclusively qi deficiency Yin Fire, as described by Li Dongyuan, in his book. That's what we currently discussed. But he brings 3 more aspects of that. One is more issue of Shao Yin, and mostly this kind of Shao Yin cold that actually the cold creating fire. So he talks about this Yin Fire created from kidney cold. So this again, we can see this concept of dull pattern. So a mixed pattern, cold and heat, or deficiency and what seems like excess. Also, the other one he discussed is called kidney yin deficiency creating fire. That's the more classical part of that. But if this fire is harassing the heart, that's when we see yin fire in this case. And the third one has to do with liver, gallbladder, qi stagnation causing depressive heat or fire, also harassing the heart. So again, I just want to point out by this is that there's a broader concept of Yin Fire other than just what we've just discussed. So this is the end of part 1 of the concept of Yin Fire in pediatrics. In part 2, I'm going to be speaking about how does Yin Fire manifest in pediatrics more specifically.